And as many of you are aware, we are continuing this nonstop adventure, just going through our communities and finding those who are really trying to genuinely impact their communities in positive ways, continuing to kind of kick over those rocks in some ways to just discover those hidden gems here in Albuquerque. And so I'm so thankful today as we are continuing that process of looking at our community connections. We have with us today from Global Give-A-Book, the CEO from Global Give-A-Book, Sylvia Macer. Sylvia, I'm so glad that you're joining with us today, and
Thank you.
I'm looking forward to this interview. So, you know, as anyone that comes into this studio that interacts and that shares about what's going on in their community and what's driving them, what they're passionate about, why they're passionate. You know, I love asking that question because so many times, you know, you don't just wake up on a Monday morning and go, I'm passionate about subject A or I'm passionate about subject B.
It's a journey.
Exactly. Now, in my interaction with you offline, it is clear that you are passionate about this subject of children's literacy. And so just a little bit curious, what drives that for you? Why are you so passionate about this?
Well, Pastor Jason, thank you for having me. I do appreciate this very much. And Global Give-A-Book started over 17 years ago. And it was a passion that I had. I guess, like we said, it's a journey. We're going on a journey every time. And I didn't realize what drove me to this point, but it was primarily I was a child of immigrants. And so they were well educated, but they weren't educated in our culture.
Mm-hmm.
And so we didn't grow up with a lot of books. And I really didn't have a passion for reading until I started going to college. Then I really enjoyed reading more for pleasure than mandatory.
Mm-hmm.
So that's been a beginning. But Global Give-A-Book, has, like I said, has been here for many years, but it was always an LLC. And so I had the community would participate, and a lot of it I funded. And when the pandemic started in 2020, I felt a burning desire to do something more and give back to my community and just not say, okay, well, it's more than a hobby.
Sure.
And so we applied for a nonprofit, and it was awarded September 3rd, 2020. So we are now a nonprofit
501c3.
501c3.
Yes.
And so it's fantastic. So it was exciting to have that done so quickly. And so now I know that it has to be in a bigger scope. So
Sure.
that the passion comes from years and years of really not wanting to read and seeing how our children are feeling like it's a punishment to read
Mm-hmm.
instead of a pleasure. And that attitude, we as a community, have to change that.
Sure.
And I see that especially with what happened with the pandemic. We really have to be more and more aware of what our children are doing.
Yeah. Absolutely, and I'm sure it's been heightened, especially this last 13 months with COVID.
Yes.
You know, many of our students have been set back in quite a bit different ways. You know, our poor kids, they've gone through just as much as the adults have in many ways. You know, trying to learn online, and you know, so I'm sure children's literacy is even more
Yes.
of an issue even now. But guide me through some of what are the statistics on children's literacy? What have you found from a research standpoint on this issue?
That's a good question because with what's been happening with the pandemic, how would I start? First, let me tell you that for every 300 low-income children, one book for every 300. That's a national statistics. That's crazy. And when you stop and think, why is there only one book for every 300 low-income children? Is because low-income families are struggling and they're having a hard time just making ends meet.
Mm-hmm.
And we have, so just thinking of that, because the face of hunger has changed. We've had executives that lost their job, and they're not thinking of getting a children's book for their child to read. They're just trying to make ends meet.
Sure.
Well, it's interesting because if you have a book drive across the street from a low-income family, believe it or not, they are not going to walk and get a book. But if you have a loaf of bread, a free loaf of bread 10 miles away, they will go get the food and bring it home. Well, that has allowed us to partner up with food pantries where they can actually have the book coming. But back to your statistics. If there's only one book with every 300 low-income children, I was reading another statistics. Let me read it to you.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. What's the impact of that?
Well, the impact is a student who can't read by third grade is 4 times likely to not to graduate. So if we have dropouts and children that are just not wanting to graduate because they're not reading proficiently by the third grade, then that impacts our community. Then you can say, well, I don't really have children. Yeah, but you have a home that child that's a dropout can turn around and come and violence. And, they're not using their mind into a better and greater things. You're
For
right.
sure. Now, emotional scars. I think this is kind of an interesting thought. I don't know if any child has gone through their entire lifetime without any type of a scar, but when it comes to children's literacy, and not being able to proficiently read or read as equal to their peers,
Right.
what does that do for a child?
Psychologists are seeing that a child that doesn't read proficiently or is not introduced to books or not introduced to it, it's a trauma event going on. And I always thought a trauma event was a child got raped, or got hurt, or abused, physical abuse, not,
Sure.
not thinking that a child that doesn't have a book or is very low in literacy could have a mental trauma.
A mental
And-
hurdle from it?
Yes, and they do. And
Yeah.
they have it.
Wow.
It's-
Something so simple that can compound into so many other variables along the way. Now, your books, I have to share, they are high quality. And I noticed this little seal. I'm going to ask for you to kind of share what that seal means, but just looking through some of the books, and you and I participated together in our Church Alive spring stock up. We made sure that we had these beautiful books all packaged and ready to go. And when I saw these things, I just quite candidly, I had to say, I am thoroughly impressed.
Yes.
And then you've brought other books along the way. So guide me through the seal, guide me through the quality of the book, guide me through your journey as far as picking out those right books.
A child to get a brand new book and packaged well. Okay, so that's why each book is individually packaged when they go in the food box. Okay, so that's done. But another thing, because of the state and church separation, there's a lot of government-run pantries that don't want a religious book, so to say. But then there's other books that they look like children's books, but they might have contents that are questionable. Okay, not right or wrong, they're just questionable. Of grabbing books that are questionable.
Sure.
So I decided to get award-winning books. And the most important thing is when you have a sealed, they're award-winning books that have already gone through the process and have won this award, like Newbery, Colacat, and they've already gone through screening the book, so I don't have to. So I know that the child is going to get a well-illustrated, well storytelling book, and we mainly serve children that are second grade and under. Okay, so that is the reason that I selected an award-winning book for the child. So
Well, that's
there wouldn't
great.
be anything.
Wow, that's just fantastic, and I'm sure just eye-catching and gripping for for the child as well.
Oh, yes. And even for an adult, sometimes they go through the food pantry, they pick up a book, they look at it, and the illustrations are so lively that it's fun to see that as an adult, and then they will bring it back if they don't have a child. But I think as an adult, we need to sometimes just stop what we're doing and pick up a little picture book.
Sure.
And that's what they are. So.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
I wanted to share a story, the reason that we're doing pantries too, and I didn't realize this just why I'm so passionate about the pantries is because many years ago, I was a single mother of 5 children, 4 boys and 1 girl, which my daughter made me a grandmother, so I forgave her for everything she did in high school. It's so wonderful to be a grandma. But with 5 children, I found myself being a customer of a pantry. And I wasn't going to spend an extra dollar on a book.
Mm-hmm.
But if when I got the food from the pantry that my children got something special that would not just feed their little bodies, but actually feed their brain.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm excited to say that my kids are doing it fantastic now
Oh.
in society. So I'm very proud. But that is something that I went through not knowing that it was going to impact me years later
Sure.
on why food pantries.
Isn't that amazing how, just one little moment or fragment from your life, like the Apostle Paul shares, we comfort those in the areas that we ourselves have been comforted in. Just that one little sliver, that one little moment can be such a life-defining adventure in a lot of ways.
Oh,
And so,
yes. And you don't realize till you're actually on the moment. It's like, wait a minute, I've experienced this. The food pantries are one point. The food pantry, hundreds of books, and they send it out. But also we work with the Animal Humane. And the Animal Humane, they'll give you a book with every adoption or just visiting them. They'll get a book, and they'll have a program, and they're waiting for the COVID-19 to calm down
Sure.
some more before they allow the child. Because before COVID, they were allowing the children to come and read to the cats.
Uh-huh.
And our program is
Tell me about that.
so Reading with Shepherd Daisy came because I have a 14-year-old. She's 14 and she's adorable. She's fantastic. And I thought, okay, a child needs to read out loud as well. But sometimes they're ashamed to read out loud. They're just not pronouncing the words properly.
Sure.
Well, what Daisy does is encourage a child to read to a pet. So the child picks up the book and reads out loud to a pet at least 15 minutes a day. And the child loves it because the pet is not going to criticize them. And we ask the parents to send us a 1-minute video of your child reading to a pet. And this precious little girl was reading to a little mouse.
Oh,
How
wow.
cute is that? And her little poodle was running around.
Was it-
No, it was Spot.
Spot the mouse. Okay.
So, and then we had another little boy that was 4 years old. He didn't know how to read, but he could picture read. So he was reading to his doggy and his stuffed animals, and he was just pretending that he was reading the words. And Spider-Man went pew, 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 and stuff. So that's a huge program that is good for children.
Sure. Now, reading to a pet too, especially the same book, that can really breed a lot of confidence in the child, right?
Oh, yes.
Especially if they can kind of repeat it and then they get familiar with those words. And that's some of the design with Daisy, right?
Yep, that's exactly correct. And so that proficient in just reading out loud.
Okay.
And so the child will really appreciate it and like it.
Wow.
So that is the one program.
When these books go out, you're primarily focused on very specific areas. It's not like you just put them on a bookshelf at the bookstore. You're going into the food pantries. I know
Yes.
you and I have worked with the Spring Stock Up. They're going into the adoption shelters, the pet adoption shelters. So you're very specialized or specific in where these are going. And then simultaneously, I know these books are of such quality that the kids they know that they're getting a gift.
Yes.
So guide me through this special moment as far as where you're trying to reach out, and then obviously
Okay.
they're feeling that gift side too.
Okay, the need is definitely out there. We're working closely with the Food Depot of Santa Fe, and they are a food bank that feeds out over 147 food pantries. So one of the programs that they have is that they actually give diapers to over 150 to 200 families a month. And so when they give the diaper, they're going to be getting a children's picture book. Most families that have little babies, they have other children that are a little bit older, so that would be great. The other need that we got is from the community pantry in Laguna, and they touch a lot of pueblos, and they're requesting 1,300 books. So the need is there. And then the other one is the Food Depot also has a children's program this summer. And that program summer will help, it'll be June and July, and it will assist over 400 children. So 400 children will get books. And so, am I answering your question, or did
Yep,
you want
no,
me to tell you
absolutely.
about the little library?
Yeah, no, share, please.
Okay, so if you have a parent that is a constant customer, they're going to get 1, 2, 3 books. So what is the child going to know, and how will the child know illustration that a 5-year-old can understand, and that illustration will show the child how to develop their own library. Get a box, put stickers on it, alphabetize the books. So now the child goes around the house, brings whatever books are out there, the books that they've gotten at the pantry, and respects every book, alphabetize it. Low-income children move a lot. Well, now they have something they can move with them, and they'll take
that
their
they
little library.
own, that
And they can name that library after their last name. This is our personal library,
Wow.
which I know the parents would like too, because then they're not going to have books running all over the place. They'll actually have a respect for them. So
Sure.
That's exciting.
So a little bit more on the personal side. You know, I know writing a book myself, or, you know, being in ministry, you know, you go through all kinds of emotional roller coasters. Almost hourly. There's just, whenever you have passion in something, it's taxing. It's emotionally draining, and it should be, you know, because if it isn't, then it's, you know, how much is it really worth, right? But so guide me through your emotional journey through this. You shared some more about your personal life and how it
Yes.
kind of catalyzed this life journey for you. But tell me about just the emotional side of, you know, getting this off the ground and getting it
Okay.
in gear.
Okay, Pastor wants to see me cry.
Oh, I didn't mean to do that. I'm sorry.
No, I'm good. That's really interesting because it is true. I felt that God wanted me to write the vision down, get the vision, work on the vision. And so I started getting the vision out and putting everything in place. Right now, the procedures are so clear that if I disappeared, somebody can actually jump in and continue the whole program. And so doing that, in just a 2-month period, we've had 600 requests for books.
Wow.
The food pantries are hungry for them. And so we have over 7 signed agreements that, okay, we do want this. This is a need. So now the vision is laid out, and that's exciting when you see it. But the roller coaster comes where's the provision?
Sure.
Where's the provision? And I know it's going to come. I just don't know how and when. And sometimes it's not till the 11th hour that
Sure.
we get the provision. But I also feel that it's a community event. We all have to want the change. We all have to want the child to start growing up with books. Having the love of reading in a child is so vital.
Yeah.
And so the roller coaster motion comes when, okay, I've got all these needs and I don't see the provision yet. And then God does another miracle, and it shows us the company that provides this book, they're wanting to partner up because they haven't seen something like this. And they're from Washington, D.C. You figure they've seen this program before, but they've never seen the
A
pattern.
workable program.
Yes, we're actually reaching out to pantries. The point of contact is already there. I don't have to reinvent the wheel.
Sure.
It's just get the book to them. So they're partnering up where they're giving us the books at a bigger discount, which is exciting. But we still need the funding because now they want to send us pallets of these fine books.
Sure.
I'm like, okay, where do I put them? Like my living room is only so big. I need a warehouse, and I don't mind partnering up with somebody and just having a warehouse because that's where the books come in. And now I need the volunteers because each book has to be individually wrapped.
Sure.
And so now we're okay. The vision is set. Now the provision has to be there. So we're looking for a warehouse. We're looking for volunteers that want to come, labeled by Global Give a Book in the back. They put a bookmarker like this, and then we package them. So that takes a little bit of time, and then we get them ready to be delivered to the pantry or the Animal Humane or wherever they're going.
Sure. So yeah, now obviously you're going to need a lot of resources in a lot of different ways, from sponsorship to facilities to manpower, those
Oh,
type of
yes.
things. So let's move into that. But before we do, let me ask one last question. I know for me, ministry-wise, the grind that you're kind of alluding to, where the processes, setting processes down, setting vision, creating cultures, those type of things, it's a grind. It's a hard, it's almost like a mill, like just, grinding through that. But simultaneously, there are moments, and if you don't have any moments, that's I'm perfectly fine with that. But just want to open up the door. Simultaneously, there are those moments when you just get a glimpse of the impact that you're making. I know in ministry it happens to me every now and then where it's just like, man, all the blood, sweat, and tears, figuratively, is all worth it just for this moment.
Yes.
Does anything jump out when you share about this?
Well, the child's face, when you see a little kid, when you had the community outreach, we saw children just grabbing the book and just their eyes opened up. Even the volunteers, their children, were grabbing the book like if it was something special. So the impact of a brand new packaged book, it's a gift.
Yeah.
And we're serving, let me share something else too that is pretty what's happening in the world. We're giving the books through the Rio Grande Valley. So that includes from Taos, which we have some churches in Taos that want some books, all the way down to Las Cruces, all the way down to El Paso and the borderline. Well, we're having difficulty with the borderlines right now, getting all these immigrants coming. No fault of the child, and it's scary when you're separated as a
Sure.
child for whatever circumstances, and you don't have your parents. So we're working with a group of Doctors Without Borders, and just trying to get a book like this to a child that is scared. Even if it's for a moment, a book like this, a good quality book, them
Sure.
and go into a different set of mind.
Sure.
So that's, if I'm answering it correctly,
Yeah.
that's what I'm seeing right now is the children
Just it
are
opens up.
getting it. Yeah, like this is attention to me, even though the parents might not give them that much attention. Here's a book. The child is out actually reading the book and looking, well, maybe not reading, but looking at pictures, and just, even if it's for a moment, they are excited about life. And we need our children to be excited about life because that will change our community.
Sure.
And right now we have a lot of children not understanding what their purpose.
Books as well, is that correct?
Yes, we do have a program. They requested 50 because they do have a lot of Spanish-speaking people there. The Pueblos don't have Spanish-speaking people. They have Pueblo-speaking, so different. So it depends on the request.
Sure.
And we try to, the pantry knows their people better than I do. So I really listen to them. We have an intake and see, Do you need Spanish books? What kind of books do you need? What would help your community?
Sure.
And then we come together on that.
Oh, that's great. All right, so let's go into the resources question. I know a little bit you've already shared a little bit. Certainly we're looking at manpower. Certainly we're looking at
Volunteers.
warehouse or some
And
type
a
of
warehouse.
storage and assembly
Because those
facility.
folks are coming. You guys, I can't stop it. The vision's already moved.
Corporate sponsors, I would
If we
assume.
have a
right?
corporate sponsor, it's a nonprofit, what benefit? You're actually helping with literacy problems that are going out. And that is going to be the most important thing your corporation can do is partner up with literacy right now, with children, with reading, and just be a part of the community. And it takes care of themselves. The whole problem will take care of itself.
itself.
Because if you're a corporation and you spend hundreds and thousands of dollars in advertising, why not just give that money to an organization like Global Give a Book and let the media cover it
Sure.
and see what you're doing?
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
some media will cover it.
Absolutely.
If you go to typing out Global Give a Book, which you can join, volunteer, or even donate. I mean, $10 a month would do wonders for children. So don't think it's too little or too much, but it really feels good when you give enough that it hurts your pocketbook.
Sure.
You're doing the right thing.
Absolutely. Now, ggab.org is also where they can contact you if
Yes.
you're looking to volunteer or contribute from a manpower standpoint in this cause. They can go straight to ggab.org as well,
Yes.
if that's correct.
That is correct.
Awesome.
Too simple.
So, moving on, question on prayer. Well, before we go there, actually, let me take a step back. I'm sure you have goals, both short term and long term. So maybe let's just start with the short term goals. Tell me about this year. Tell me where you're going.
The short-term goal for 2021 is Global Give a Book wants to donate 21,000 books.
Wow.
And it's possible. The demand is there. The provision, I know it's coming, but it's not something that cannot be tangible.
What about long term? How does that?
The long-term goal is I want to touch million of children. I want millions and millions of children to be touched by Global Give a Book.
Wow.
And and to have their own libraries. That's going to be a long-term process, but it's very doable.
Sure.
And you know what? And you know this. What used to take 10 years, it's happening in 5 years.
Sure.
What used to take 5 years is happening in 1 year.
Yeah.
So that's why I see it very possible that we can touch 1 million children in the next 5 years or less.
Sure. So prayer requests. How can we be in prayer for the organization? I mean, obviously we talked from a restore standpoint, but are there any additional variables that we need to keep in prayer for you?
Well, one of the prayers that God has me doing right now, and it's exciting when I do it, but it also is a little bit scary. And so I drive around the whole city. I start up on Tramway, I come down to I-25 and Tramway, I go through the Big I, and I do the complete circle. Now he's asking me to do it further. But I pray for every child that does not understand what they need to do to read, or they don't have a book. I'm praying for every child I can think, and I pray in the Spirit all the way around. And it can get scary because sometimes, you feel like, okay, God has this huge vision, and then you don't see anybody behind you. It's like, okay, I know the Holy Spirit's behind me, but I want flesh,
Yeah.
flesh and blood, just somebody.
Sure.
And so the prayer would be just, I don't want, this will happen as long as we don't faint.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's a done deal. And it's not because I'm doing it, it's because it's already in motion. The Holy Spirit's taking care of it. I just don't want to faint. And if you all, and I do ask every one of you, you pray for the board of directors, for the team, for myself, to just stay the course, and focus on children's books.
On the purpose, on the drive. Keep your eye on the ball. That's
Amen.
great. On a more personal level, how can we be in prayer for you, Sylvia? Oh, I am about to make you cry, aren't I?
No, I would like the provision to come a little faster, but it's not going to be here a minute too late. It always will be here right when it needs to. I have 4 boys and 1 girl, and I'm a grandma of 2, so I always pray that my children, and my prayer has always been that there's no greater joy than to know that your children walk in the truth. And sometimes their perception of the truth is a little different than the Word of God.
Sure.
And it's so gratifying to see them line up with God's truth and not man-made truth.
Mm-hmm.
And so my prayer is
That's awesome.
that okay?
Absolutely. Well, Albuquerque, I hope you enjoyed this time with us. Certainly, Sylvia
Thank
and
you.
Global Give a Book are very passionate about children's literacy, and so I appreciate this time just to kind of spin on the subject, because it is one of those things that oftentimes gets undervalued or overlooked because of just so many other glaring urgent needs. This is an important need. And sometimes
Yes.
the urgent outweighs the important at times, and so
And you don't want the statistics to get any worse.
sure,
I mean, are we going to wait? This is the time
absolutely.
to, and if you stop and think of a 5-year-old not having a book, that's going to impact
Sure.
us all.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, it has certainly been a pleasure to spend this time with you, Sylvia, and hope it has been impacting to you out there, community in the city of Albuquerque. And by all means, make your way to ggab.org. If this moment hits you in any way and you want to contribute to the cause, one facet or the other, please feel free to do so, ggab.org.